this past Friday with a packed arena, and history was made for women's basketball coach Trish Fabbri, as she now has 500 plus wins under her belt. All this and more starting now. Welcome to Bobcat Breakdown. I'm your host, Brandon Murdoch, and alongside me is executive producer of this very show, Connor Court, and associate producer, Mike Singer. I also heard you guys are roommates. How are you guys feeling tonight?
I'm feeling pretty good, feeling pretty confident. I think you're going to be surprised when we get to B block when we talk about hockey, but first, we're going to talk about my sport and basketball.
Brandon, I'm feeling very confident, and the rule is tonight. Loser of tonight has to move out. I'll pack your bags for you if you really want, but
I didn't sign this contract beforehand.
High stakes on this one. Awesome, guys. Let's jump into it. Trish Fabbri has created a history this past week after the win versus Mount St. Mary's. She has clinched 500 wins since her start at Quinnipiac. Connor, what is the impact that Trish has had not only for the women's basketball team, but for Quinnipiac athletics as a whole?
Yeah, you took the words right out of my mouth, Brandon. 500 career wins is a legacy amongst itself, but like you said, it goes so much further than that. Women's hockey head coach Cass Turner talks about all the time as how Fabbri has been this mother figure too, where Rand Pecknold and Trish Fabbri came in at the same time. They rumor on the streets that they held like a little office together. They held the same phone when they were recruiting and stuff like that. But it goes so much further along that. I could go on and on about women's soccer. Dave Clark, he got a phone call from Trish Fabbri when they were talking about when they first went to the NCAA tournament for the first time in almost 2 decades at that point. So the list goes on and on, but, Singer, what do you got for this?
You were looking at it on your full screen. She's only had 7 losing seasons. That last season in 2010, 2011. It's insane that she has had a winning season streak all the way up to now. And just to another point, you think of maybe Rand Pecknold as the face, but I always think of Trish Fabbri as the voice. She's always loud. She's always vocal. Anytime you think of women's basketball, I always picture Trish Fabbri on the side. She's cheering, she's clapping, she's motivating her team, and I really put the voice of Quinnipiac and Quinnipiac athletics to Trish Fabbri.
Yeah, when you talk about Trish as well, you and I both have personal stories, and I know you told me when you were in the Piazza one day, she yelled at you to come to a women's basketball game. Same thing with me, but up on York Hill Calf, you talked about as well 5 tournament championships, 1 when they were in the NEC and 4 since they've joined the MAC in the early parts of the 2010s. But this season, they talk about just this season in general. This season in 2022, they started off as 8-5, and in 2023, they've gotten to 10-2, an unbreakable streak that we've talked about in past on these shows. But being able to turn around a less than impressive year has been just another confirmation of how good she is on the court, but also off the court. You talk about on the court. When I picture Trish Fabbri, you talk about all the fashion that happens with, she was at the one game with the Go Birds on when the Eagles were in the playoffs and that stuff. But it really talks about, how good she has been on and off, and really igniting the Quinnipiac community to come out to their games and support them.
I think this is probably the one question that we're going to agree on tonight, that she's definitely one of the coaches to model yourself after if you want to start coaching in sports.
Yeah, I would 100% agree with that as well.
Yeah, Trish has had a fantastic run here at Quinnipiac, but her Bobcats have been rolling over the last few weeks, winning most of their games by double-digit totals. Is the team going to continue the double-digit win streak or get swept by Niagara in the regular season? Mike, what are your thoughts?
So my thoughts are they're going to continue their win streak. They're going to beat Niagara. I mean, the last game that they played, they only lost 67-64. It was such a close game. It's probably as close as a basketball game will be. You look at it on your TV right now, the points are so close to each other. They're pretty much even, except in the free throw percentage. Excuse me, I'm getting so ahead of myself. I'm stumbling all over my words because I truly think that Quinnipiac women's basketball team is going to extend the streak. Last game, they lost January 14th against Iona. That's the last time they've won a game. We're already almost through February. They're on a 10-game winning streak. The ball is rolling. Momentum is on their side. I think they're going to get it done against Niagara.
We talked about in the last question that that'll be the only thing we agree on, but I agree with you on this. I feel like the winning streak will continue. 10-game winning streak doesn't happen by chance. They've been allowing 49 points per game over the last 10 games, second in the MAC, right behind Iona by about 0.2 points. I'll play devil advocate right here, but how QU doesn't get this win on Thursday against Niagara is if they can't stop the Parker sisters. Aliyah is averaging 17.3 points per game. The younger sister of Angel Parker, who is averaging 16.5. Those guards of Mackenzie Deweese, Jackie Grisdale, and a bunch of others, Mackenzie Helms and Rose Carver, are going to have to step up both offensively and defensively to try to slow them down. But when they do do get those points, being able to come down the offensive end and stop them as well. Another thing that couldn't happen is that they don't give the ball to Michaela Morris, Kertier Hayward, and Mary Baskerville. 3 of their top 4 scorers are above 6'2", and Niagara has 3 players on the entire roster that are above 6 feet, and all average under 11 minutes per game. That's a recipe for disaster for Niagara. And like I mentioned, they're two completely different teams since they first played. Since then, they were on they went 1-2 against Niagara and Iona, winning game in between then. But like you said, since then, a 10-game winning streak. It doesn't get much better than that.
You were talking about the winning streak, especially that there have been 3 times this season that they've won by 20 or more points, and 6 times this season that they've won by more than 15. The offense for them definitely rolling. It's almost going to be an upset for Niagara if they're able to topple Quinnipiac.
Yeah, I think it's good for Niagara as well that they're kind of coming in as an underdog. So we'll talk about underdog stories in a little bit later. But when you look at Niagara, they really have nothing to lose in this game because Quinnipiac has been on this 10-game winning streak. You almost feel more pressure to keep that streak going than Niagara coming in and trying to upset that.
Definitely, we're going to definitely have to see and find out if Quinnipiac's able to continue with the win streak.
It'll be interesting to see how much more peace we have between these 2 roommates. But let's head to the men's side, who have had a bit of a roller coaster the last few weeks, blowing some leads and overcoming double-digit deficits. Connor, does the team get too comfortable when they're up, or are they better off coming from behind or keeping the game close?
I feel like they're definitely way too comfortable when they get ahead. The exception of this was Iona when they played it in early parts of January. They led by 14 at half and ended up winning by over 20 points the entire game. The games that they were leading at double digits at half, there have been 4 times that's happened. They've gone 2-2 in those games. Most recently against Niagara in that overtime. Again, I know you and I were both watching that on there. When they led by 10 at halftime, but ended up losing in overtime by 6 points. But they also led by 17 against Iona in that rematch game throughout then. But then they lost by 6 points as well. The games they won as well, Manhattan, they led by 10, but eventually did beat them by almost 20 points in that game. But then against Siena, most recently this past Friday, they led by 14 and barely got away with that win, with a 3-point win. In games when they've led within 5, they've also scored. They've had 10 of those games when they've led by, or with the games been within 5 at halftime. The record is 7-3 in that point. I feel like they get too complacent and too comfortable when they're ahead. I feel like they'd much rather be wanting the game close to force themselves to keep their foot on the gas and be able to finish teams off.
I do think we're starting off on the same foot here. I'm also going to agree. They do get way too comfortable. Also, to your point, you can't be up 45-28. You can't have that comfortable lead and then drop the game, especially to a team like Iona. I just think that's unacceptable. They get way too comfortable when they have the lead. They almost sit back and think, well, what can happen at this point? We're already in the lead. And then they just end up losing the game. At that point, you got to keep your foot on the gas and keep putting the pedal to the metal, as some say. And you got to close out the games. You can't get complacent. You can't sit back on the lead, and you just have to close out each game.
Yeah, I feel like a prime example of what we're kind of talking about was this past Sunday at Ryder, the double overtime. I had the privilege of being on that call with women's basketball player Raven Douglas and Noah Epstein, but it felt like there weren't many times when the game was close. At many times they got down all the way to 16, but then roared back and to force that double overtime and eventually came with a 2-point win, 90-88, excuse me. But I feel like what the difference between good teams and great teams is that putting teams away when they're ahead is crucial. They have to be able to do that consistently. And there's been points in times when the men's basketball team has been able to do that, but they haven't been able to find that consistent level of being able to do that. You saw Alexis Reyes, a sophomore guard, go blow up, have a career night at 12 points on Sunday, but there weren't many times where outside of that he's had a lot of success in that points. But they can't get complacent when leading. We both talked about that. And I feel like a lot of that has to do with the coaching staff top to bottom, the senior and grad student leadership at this point, and being able to work their way down all the way, being able to play a complete 40 minutes game, because this is the first time that they have the opportunity this weekend against Manhattan to get their first 20-win season in almost 10 years. That's an insane stat. Baker definitely wasn't even here yet. He was still assistant coach at Villanova with Jay Wright right before they won those 2 national championships. So I feel like a lot of it has to do with the coaching staff, but also has to do with the players who are actually on the court.
I definitely have to fully agree on that point.
We're agreeing way too much on this, I will say, to start off the show.
We'll see as we get into the second block. We'll just have to wait and find out.
All right, now let's flash back to 2 weeks ago when Joey O'Donohue and Dylan Sommer debated on if Dezi Jones is the most impactful player on the team.
But for me, when I need a bucket, I want Dezi Jones. I mean, Dezi Jones is the person leading the team in points per game right now, and he's leading the team in total points. He's also their best three-point per shooter by a large margin, and he has a better field goal percentage than any other guard on the team. Of course, Nweke is going to be a bit better because he's a big, but how can you pick Nweke when he's not even top 2 on the team in scoring right now? Dezi Jones is leading the team in points per game. It's been Dezi, who's been their number one scoring option, and it's going to continue to be Dezi down the stretch because he's averaging about 12 points per game right now.
This past Sunday, Jones had a career high of 28 points versus Ryder. Mike, do you agree with Joey when Dezi Jones?
I'm going to have to disagree with him. I don't think that Dezi Jones is him. I'm going to have to go with Matt Belanc. To Matt Belanc's point, he has more games started than Jones. He's second in scoring with 21 points. Jones has 336. You take away that career game he had, they're basically neck and neck. As of right now, you see on your screen right now, Dezi Jones and all his stats right now. Total points, Matt Belanc is only 15 behind him, and he's only 2 behind Jones with 3-pointers. Matt Belanc has 47, and he's second in front of Jones, I might add, with 110 field goals made. Matt Belanc is only a half a point behind Jones in the scoring average. I think when it comes down to the wire, Baker Dunleavy's looking for someone. He's going to go towards Matt Belanc.
You know, before I get into my points, did you actually watch the game against Ryder when he scored his career high 28 points on Sunday?
I did.
Answer that.
We had all in our suite. We have 4 TVs. One of them was that game. Of course, I was watching it.
Okay, well, I'm glad we finally made it our first disagreement of the night. Dezi Jones has to be the number one scoring option going forward. 28 career points again. 28 is a career high against Ryder on Sunday. He's averaging 12 points a game. To your point, Matt Belanc is a very versatile player. He can score at all levels. He has 17 double-digit games, 9 15-plus points games, 3 20-plus point games. But with Belanc, he has too many hot and cold streaks. There's been 4 games where he scored under 5 points. You want that out of your number one scoring option? Answer yes or no.
I'm gonna have to say yes.
You would want him to score under 5 points.
I think when it comes down to it, you're gonna have to go with Matt Belanc.
Okay, well, you got me too flustered with this one right here. He's been playing with point guard 1 the majority of the time. And when they have those whole high ball screens with Paul Etienne, he's been able to create so much coming off the ball screens, whether it is attacking, hitting the mid-range, getting to the rim, or passing out to Tyrese Williams, Matt Belanc, Louis Corred to shoot those threes and knock them down. His biggest improvement has been playing amongst the trees and finishing at the rim. I remember one in particular where Dezi Jones used the rim as almost a blocker to try to get 2 points, crucial in the late of the second half. But, he's been shooting 41.4% from the field, and the NBA average from StatMuse is 43.4% from the field. He's been playing like an NBA guard, Trae Young, if you will. I know Joey made that comparison a couple weeks ago with that when we played that pro Bobcat game, but I feel like it's got to be Dezi Jones. I don't know, as much as Matt Belanc is productive and stuff like that, I don't know how you can disagree with me on this one.
I mean, just because we are direct roommates doesn't mean I always have to agree with you. It's okay to be different in every now and then, but I truly think that it's going to be Matt Belanc. You take away Dezi Jones' career game, they're basically tied with each other in almost every category. I'm just going to have to go with Matt Belanc. He has more experience. He has more games started. That's what's making me lean towards Belanc.
He's had more multiple 20-point games and more 15-point games. How can you disagree with the numbers?
Just going to have to go with Matt Belanc. It's okay if you think that you're right. But I know I'm right. It's okay. You can be wrong.
He would say that. I'll leave it at that. He would say that.
These guys are heating up, but it's time to take our first break of the night. But don't go anywhere as we hit the ice to talk all things men's and women's hockey. We'll be right back.
If you need to do something to feel okay to drive, you're not okay to drive. Don't drive buzzed.
When we adopt a shelter pet, we discover they're a unique mix of all kinds of things.
Come on, Jules, spot on this last one. There it is.
on with it. Leo. They're a little bit of a lot of things, but they're all pure love.
Maybe you can make retirement happen. After all, you made home ownership happen. Homeschooling yourself on loans, beefing up your credit score.
So I'm pre-approved.
You were like, yes! Sorry. Color coding listings, ticking boxes, and flushing every toilet in a 20-mile radius. Home sweet home. You aced house hunting. Now get the tips you need to get on track at aceyourretirement.org.
Welcome back. Coming off a weekend where the women's hockey team got swept by Clarkson and St. Louis, Connor, are these late season slip-ups going to affect them going into the tournament?
The obvious answer has to be yes. They've gone 3-3 in these last 6 games, and their biggest reason I feel like has to be that 11-3 loss to Princeton on January 29th. It was absolutely an abysmal loss, very out of the ordinary. And Cameron Lavasser, our roommate, both also put out the tweets. Their first loss the way they allowed 11 goals since almost 2003 and 2004. I almost feel like that was part of the reason. And they've never quite looked the same since then. They came back to win against Dartmouth 8-0. But they've gone 4-2 in the last 6 games for the past 2 seasons heading into the ECAC tournament. They never dealt with this type of adversity. I feel like it's got to be the biggest reason heading these games. It's going to haunt them. It's just a matter of when it's going to.
For everyone at home, don't listen to him.
Just because I'm a basketball guy doesn't mean I can talk about hockey.
They're going to be fine. There have only been 2 times this regular season when they did not win after a loss. December 10th versus Providence, December 31st against Wisconsin, and in February 17th versus St. Lawrence, and now this time, February 18th versus Clarkson. Only, if you want to call them sets, if you will, only 2 times in a set, in the 2 games, December 10th,
That's what a set is.
December 31st, I don't need you to chime in right now, February 17th, February 18th, that they've lost back-to-back. That leaves them with 3 other times that they've lost in general. There's only been 2 times that they've lost back-to-back games. Every other time they've gone on win streaks, 7 games, 6-game win streaks. I don't know how you can say that they're going to be slipping up in the late season. It's going to affect them in the playoffs. I think it's just ludicrous.
I won't say that they're going to slip up at any point. But, Mike, you and I know as well, in any sport, one team's standing at the end of the day. And I don't think it will be the Bobcats with the amount of slip-ups that they had at these latest parts of the season. You look at Yale, you look at Colgate, you look at Cornell. All these teams are playing extremely well, maybe their best hockey at this end of the season. When you look at Quinnipiac, they have been struggling. Like I said, 3-3 in the last 6 games. This entire year, they've won over 20 games the entire year. How can you make the case for them being fine when they're 3-3 in the last 6?
I think you just look at the loss, you say, all right, we're moving on, and they've done that so well that they're able to go on and win.
I agree with that.
All right, guys. As previously mentioned, this past weekend, the women's ice hockey team lost to St. Louis 4-1. This Friday and Saturday, the 2 teams will face off again for the start of the ECAC hockey quarterfinals. Mike, what does the team need to change from the previous weekend?
You have to go back to basic hockey. You just have to get shots on net. You just have to shoot the puck. Simple hockey. More shots equal more goals. Quinnipiac got outshot by St. Lawrence in that game. St. Lawrence had 34 shots. Quinnipiac had 28, and St. Lawrence won. You don't need to be a pee-wee in hockey to understand that. You get more pucks on net, you get more goals. You look at it up on your screen right now. Quinnipiac, 28 shots, St. Lawrence 34. That led to the 4-1 win for St. Lawrence. Secondly, my second point that I'm going to make, they have to play smart, disciplined hockey. Quinnipiac can't be sitting in the box. Quinnipiac took 5 different penalties throughout the game. St. Lawrence didn't score, which meant Quinnipiac sat with a man in the box for 10 minutes, half a period. You can't expect to win a hockey game if you're sitting in the box for half a period of play.
Real quick, do you think they'll be okay against St. Lawrence this weekend?
I think they're going to be fine.
2 games? 2 games, 3 games?
Sure.
2 games, 3 games. All right, I guess I'll agree to disagree with you at this point. As of late, St. Lawrence has had their number. QU has dropped the last 3 out of 4 games, and the goal differential has been +5 in favor of the Saints. I feel like the biggest thing that needs to change, you mentioned already, stop committing penalties. That's the biggest thing. You talked about it. Almost 10 minutes a man down just on Friday alone. They get 16% of the entire game. You can't be having that when you're trying to make these deep tournament runs. I know I just played, that they're not going to be well in the regular seasons, but if they want to change this is what's going to happen. Stop committing penalties. They're one of the least penalized teams in the entire country, the best actually. They've had when they pucks on net, they've averaged 35.6 per game. Their opponents almost just under 21 per game. They have to be able to play disciplined hockey, like you said, especially on that defensive side of the ball, the puck. Excuse me, I'm still in my basketball mood. Apologies.
It's time to move on. We're not doing basketball. We're doing
I will want to bring up this one point. The last time Quinnipiac played St. Lawrence in the playoffs, the 2017-18 season, they were swept by the Bobcats in 2 games, and the goal differential 5-2, and the goal differential in this regular season +5.
You guys are feeling the energy right now, but this past weekend, the Battle of Whitney Avenue occurred at the M&T Bank Arena with people lining up as early as 3 p.m. to get inside. Connor, does the product on the ice match the hype that comes with the game?
I'll be honest with you, Brandon, as much as I want to say it's not worth the hype, the rivalry will always be there. I'll be completely honest with you, Will. The biggest rivalries in games in college sports, you think about it, Duke UNC, Michigan, Ohio State, Auburn, Alabama, Army, Navy, all of those in football outside of Duke UNC basketball. You look at it this year, Duke and UNC are not ranked nationally in the top 25, but yet every time it comes to the Cameron Indoor, the Dean Arena, it's always going to be this competitive nature that always brings out the best in their fans. When you look at it, the distance between QU and Yale is obviously 8 miles. The Battle of Whitney Avenue, it goes without saying. But I want to give you a quick little stats. The last time Yale stats, the last time they scored in Hamden before Friday, 2017. The last time they won a game, 2018, at Ingles Rink. And they shut out QU last time was 2013, and you and I both know that was a 4-0 win in the national championship. But the goals average is almost 2 goals between QU and Yale between the two. But personally, what I would want to see the more of a rivalry game has been QU versus Harvard. I just looked at it today. A deadlock record, 18 wins, 18 losses, and 5 ties. The last time Harvard beat Quinnipiac, was in 2022 in the ECAC championship, that Matthew Coronado overtime winner. It was an amazing goal to end it off. But they're constantly going back and forth in their matchups, and the goal differentials between Harvard and Quinnipiac in those matchups is about under 0.5. I'd say that game needs to be more of a rivalry than Quinnipiac versus Yale, but I feel like Yale and Quinnipiac will always have a rivalry because they're 8 miles apart. And it's just the tradition that comes with the game.
I'm going to agree with the part where you said that Quinnipiac versus Yale is worth it. Like you said, it's 100% worth it. Who doesn't want to say that you were able to beat Yale? People lined up around noon on Friday just to see Quinnipiac beat Yale. I personally have never heard the People's United Center this season as loud as it was during that Yale game. It's been drilled into students' mind that you live to see that Quinnipiac-Yale rivalry at home, the one game a season where Yale takes the 8 miles up Whitney Avenue just to play the Bobcats. Quinnipiac has a record of 28-7-5. If you know that your rivalry is, even if you want to call it a rivalry at this point, is 28-7-5, who wouldn't want to think that that's the best game of the season? You're almost guaranteed to win with a 28-7 record.
Real quick, I just want to jump into the average attendance the last 5 games for Harvard versus QU is just under 3,200, and the average for the Yale has been just under 3,000. I feel like it goes without saying that QU versus Harvard draws more attention.
You guys have had some great points, but it's time to take our last break of the night. But don't go anywhere. When we come back, we will take a listen to the QBSN Call of the Week, and of course, we will have final roars.
The Scan, a simple procedure whose mission is to detect lung cancer early.
I'm here to save you.
But I feel fine.
That's great, but you may still be at high risk for lung cancer.
Oh man, that's a new fence.
If you smoke, early detection could save your life. Learn more at savedbythescan.org.
I don't think that many kids in my son's school even do it.
He makes fun of his friend who vapes.
He would never try it.
She's into soccer.
She's on the honor roll.
She's just not the type.
No way.
No way.
No way.
No way. My kid would never vape.
Get your head out of the cloud. Today, nearly 8,000 kids will start vaping. Maybe even yours. Learn about the dangers at talkaboutvaping.org.
Type 2 diabetes can have a big impact on your life, but how can it be prevented? Well, the first step is knowing if you have prediabetes, a serious medical condition that puts you at high risk for type 2 diabetes. 1 in 3 American adults has prediabetes, but more than 80% don't know they have it. The good news is, prediabetes can be reversed. And for many people, healthy changes in their daily routine can make a big difference. Take the 1-minute risk test today at doihaveprediabetes.org.
What do you think you're doing, Kevin?
Was just gonna drive home.
There are several warning signs present that you shouldn't be driving.
Like hearing voices?
Like your text-to-emoji ratio?
Oh man, the selfies.
Selfie. Nailed it. We all have warning signs that let us know that we're probably not okay to drive. Mine is pretending to be your subconscious.
Craig, come on man, let's split a ride home.
Welcome back. It's time to take a listen to this past Saturday's QBSN Call of the Week, where the men's basketball team defeated Ryder in double overtime. Connor, you had the opportunity to call this game with women's basketball player Raven Douglas. Let's take a listen.
So Bobcats up 90-88, 3.7 seconds to go. Let's see what Ryder has in store. Powell. It's going to be Murray to inbound. Gets it to James. Back to Murray. Murray, 2 seconds. One has to throw up at three. It is no good! Murray misses at the buzzer, and the Quinnipiac Bobcats hang on to win 90-88 here in one of the best games of the season and one of the best you will ever see. Oh my goodness! Quinnipiac wins in double OT. Truly
a big win.
Truly a special game to be a part of.
Now it's time for everyone's favorite part of the night, Final Roars. Mike, take it away.
In 1994-1995, Quinnipiac hired Rand Pecknold to take the reins as the head coach, and since that first season, he has had only 4 losing seasons. Rand Pecknold has 30 years of coaching under his belt and is one of the longest tenured coaches at Quinnipiac. This past season, Rand secured his 600th win as head coach of the Quinnipiac Bobcats. Now, in the final season of his contract, it's time for Rand Pecknold to become the highest paid coach at this school. The reason is that he has the numbers and the success to back him up. Sitting on his fire mantle of awards are 2 Connecticut Ice titles, 3 consecutive Cleary Cup championships, and most importantly, the title of most wins as a head coach in men's hockey history. Quinnipiac is known for its hockey. That's a given, and you wouldn't want the winningest head coach to walk away. So it's time to ink him to a new contract that keeps him in Hamden for the long future.
Since the dawn of our nation's history, the American people love an underdog story. It was 13 small colonies against an entire nation, and well, we all know how that one turned out. Here at Quinnipiac, we've been fortunate to have one of our own underdog stories on the women's basketball team. Jackie Grisdale has been the ultimate team competitor since she walked on the team in the summer of 2021. During her first season, she did not see over 15 minutes on the floor until late January of last season. Since then, she has been a solid contributor for the team. Over the summer, just a few days before her birthday, she was put on full scholarship. Head coach Trish Fabbri calling her very deserving and the ultimate competitor. Coming back for her sophomore campaign, Grisdale did not skip a beat. From making one start last year to not missing a start this season. She has also not played under 21 minutes this season and is averaging just over 10 points per game. To say this story is finished would be ridiculous of me. Looking at the crystal ball of Grisdale's future is very bright. By this time next year, she will be leading a new group of Bobcats to a potential MAC championship, like George Washington led the colonists to independence. Happy belated President's Day, everyone.
With tournament time around the corner for winter sports and teams at Quinnipiac in different spots in the standings, I asked the question if playoff seeding is really that important. We've seen the QU men's and women's soccer team run the table as number 1 seeds, and we've seen QU volleyball win the MAC as the 6th seed. And on the grandest stage, we've seen St. Peter's make it all the way to the Elite 8 as a 15 seed. Teams will always stress about where they end up at the end of the regular season. But at the end of the day, postseason success comes from teams playing their best at the right time. Teams that can gel together when the going gets tough, and those who realize the regular season doesn't matter anymore. As nice as it is to have home court or ice advantage, this is not what makes a champion. And the team that realizes this will go the farthest in the tournaments.
You know, Mike, when you look at, this future of this women's hockey team, you talk about St. Lawrence and how they've, split the series of regular season. What do you think the biggest key is going into this game for this weekend starting on Friday?
I think it's going to be, and this is going to be a little biased, so just hang on with me. It's got to be the goaltending. You got to have, as a goaltender, you are looked at as the first line of defense for your team. I think no matter who they start, it's going to be most important that the goaltending starts and comes out with a win.
And with that, this episode of Bobcat Breakdown is in the books. Be sure to check us out on Q30TV.com and go follow us on social media at Q30 Television. For Connor Corey and Micah Singer, for all the producer and everyone behind the scenes, I'm Brandon Murdoch. Thank you for tuning in to this week's episode of Bobcat Breakdown. See you next week.